What's happening, Stokastic NASCAR fans? My name's Terry McBride. I'm not on the wrong stream. You're not on the wrong stream. We're all here to talk about NASCAR today. This isn't a baseball show. We just got done with that. That slate's up and running. Hopefully you got your lineups up and running for that and you're engaged there. But we're here to talk about race cars. We're here to talk about NASCAR. We've got an exciting slate coming up with, I believe, a road race, as I understand it. And I think this course is in New York, if I'm not mistaken, which is just kind of an oddball for me as a casual NASCAR observer. But fortunately, I've got Chris Pennell, our expert, here to talk through all these different things, explain all of this to me, and go through all the best picks and lineup builds for you guys. So, Chris, how's your Saturday, Sunday? What day is today? Sunday? How's your Sunday going?
Doing well. It got a little bit worse with all the news that we have to talk about here quite soon. We have several drivers dropping to the rear. So while I thought I was pretty prepared for this show, that kind of went out the window a few minutes ago. So we're going to talk all through it. But nice to be on another show with you. It's been a while since baseball earlier in the season, so it should be a fun one.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely haven't gotten to do a lot of these together, but it's always fun to jump on with you. And it's always fun for me, to jump on and do a sport that I don't really play a lot. Like, admittedly, I do not play a ton of NASCAR. I do not know a ton about NASCAR, but I love hearing about this stuff. I love hearing the strategy, hearing how these different sports come together and learning about it, because then I can take advantage and I can play it. And what I love about the site is you can just grab these tools from the site, knowing nothing about these damn sports, and still be profitable in some of these races. So it's really fun to dive into this. I'm looking forward to talking it through. But you mentioned off the top, well, actually, before we dive into that, let me tell everybody, jump down there, guys. You should know by now, just when the show starts, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It's just so easy. So you get all the notifications when we go live, when we've got promos, all that good stuff. Hitting the like helps us out quite a bit. So make sure you're doing that. Helps us. And we're brought to you by Prize Picks today. We'll talk a little bit more about Prize Picks a little bit later on, but they're a great sponsor. So we'll make sure you're going over there, checking out Prize Picks for all your NASCAR fun. We'll talk about the Tua promo in a little bit. So let's get into this now, Chris. You just mentioned off the top, we got some big news about some guys getting pushed to the back of the field here based on a few different factors. So what's that going to do, in your opinion, just to the overall look and feel of this race before we even get into the, the specifics of roster construction?
Yeah, so most of the drivers going to the rear don't really affect it a ton. We have Christopher Bell already in the rear, and then some of the scrubs back there, Cody Ware, Kvyat, I believe it's how you pronounce it. They're already in the rear, so it doesn't matter too much. The big names here are Kyle Busch, who's a very popular driver, not really excelled at the road courses this year, so I wasn't really a big fan anyway. But the big thing here for me is William Byron. I wrote him up in the article. I talked about him in the Stokastic video early in the week, and I've obviously loved him throughout the weekend, so I've talked him up a lot. Unfortunately, now I am not a huge fan of William Byron. Track position is very important at these track types, and now that he's going to the rear with his original starting position of fourth, he has a lot of ground to make up, and at that point, I'm rather just rostering the drivers with lower starting points, because they're going to offer me that place differential upside. So as of right now, I'm currently lowering Byron projections, lowering exposure, just to be transparent with everybody.
Okay. So that's an important call out for anybody who's read your stuff or watched any of the videos or been paying attention on the site. Cause I did notice that, he was kind of featured, and it does look like the tools just got updated. So I'm just updating the top drivers tool in the background. So you can see that's kind of coming through for him as well. So talk to me in general. You mentioned the the importance of positioning in a race like this. Talk to me in general about just the structure of this race, what you see differently from a typical race versus a road race, and how to kind of just go about building lineups for this type of a race.
Yes, just to compare from last week. So every single track is always going to be a different approach from NASCAR DFS, because last week we were at Richmond. There was 400 laps, which means around 300 total odometer points. We only have 90 laps on the schedule this weekend, which basically equals about 60 odometer points. So we're not really hunting lap leaders too much. Yes, it's nice if you have the main lap leader in your lineup, but for the most part, you are mainly looking at finishing position and place differential. We've seen at the road courses this year, it's a lot tougher to pass than other tracks. So having that premium track position to start is nice. And yes, while it is hard to pass, there's still going to be drivers that are able to move through the field, like Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Christopher Bell. But for the most part, drivers that start near the front tend to be able to stay up there.
Okay. So we're really chasing a lot of those, premium starting positions, and then maybe some of just like the top end, semi-expensive, pretty popular drivers who are coming from the back and potentially be able to make up some of that ground. What are you targeting in terms of the top end, as far as some of these, upper tier drivers, these guys, who cost a lot, but are typically going to be worth it? It looks like they're rating out, a couple pegs down the board, but certainly going to be fairly important when we're sorting by something like top 6 percentage. If we're sorting by the top 4 positioning, it typically leans toward those more expensive drivers for the most part. So who are you specifically targeting out of that group?
Yeah, so it's pretty obvious here, but Chase Elliott's the one that's going to grade out the best for me. He's the most expensive driver on both sites, but he's the road course king, probably going to go down as the best road course racer of all time when it's all said and done. He's still young, long ways to go, but I mean, he was super fast in practice. He's got the car to beat, qualified on the pole. We've seen at the road courses this year where if you're on the pole, you can probably lead some laps early on. But you don't have to worry about him selling out for stage points, because for those of you who don't know, we have the playoffs starting soon, and some drivers are going to be staying out for stages to grab stage points. And what happens when they do that is that they're going to have to start in the back of the pack once the next stage, because the other guys already pit early on. So Chase Elliott, we don't have to worry about that. He should lead a large chunk of laps in this race. I wouldn't be surprised if he led half of them and probably brings home the win. So I like him a lot starting in the front row. And I really like trying to roster someone else that has some place differential upside mixed in with them, because I don't think rostering Kyle Larson on the front row with them will be the best way to go about it. I like getting guys like Ross Chastain mixed in there with Christopher Bell to kind of offset the 0 place differential we have with Chase Elliott.
Okay. So yeah, Elliott, that's where, the one thing that stands out to me when I'm looking at the board here, he's sitting at a 2 in the place differential because he's starting on the pole, starting first, but he's 51 in terms of our probability of being a top 2 dominator. So you just kind of book those points. And then you mentioned it was Chastain, I think you said, starting 18th, but he's cost 10 grand. So that's worth it to go to that price tag based on his potential for changing up some of the position. Looks like he ranks like 4th in terms of our top 4 positional rankings. So he's worth chasing that 10,000. You like him better than like a Truex or a Blaney?
I do, because Truex and Blaney, these are the guys that are not locked into the playoffs yet. So I do think they're going to be points racing. I think Truex is going to mirror what Ryan Blaney does, because these are the 2 guys that are sitting well in the points this year, but they do not have a win. So they are in danger of missing the playoffs. So Blaney's going to be points racing. And I am worried, while he does grade out well in all projections, he grades out well for me, grades out well in the site, going to be high owned today. But I do worry that they're going to be starting deep in the pack for stage 3, and they did not show any speed in practice. So I do worry about their ceilings. I think the floors are nice, but the ceilings I don't think are going to be quite there for some of the other drivers that they're priced around.
Okay. And then from the top tier, the Elliott, Larson, Reddick, Chastain, the $10,000 guys from the top tier, if we're just sorting by price, are there any of these guys that you're just kind of ruling out that just aren't on the board for you at all? Or at least that you're, dramatically undercutting the field, let's say, if you're not crossing them off entirely?
Yeah, I'm not crossing anybody off here. These guys have obviously been excellent at road courses this year. The one I'm lowest on right now is Tyler Reddick, just because I don't think he's going to be able to get out front of the 200 cars with Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson on the front row. It's scary to say, because Reddick has won back-to-back road course races, but I just don't think he's going to have the raw speed over a Hendrick Motorsports car where there's more horsepower needed at this track type. So for me, a lot of my lineups have either Elliott and Larson, one of the 2, and then paired with Ross Chastain up top.
Okay. All right. And that looks like it's being reflected in the ownership, where Reddick comes in out of that grouping of the $10,000 drivers on DK, comes in at a 12% lowest. Larson sitting right there at 13. So talk a little bit more, if you can, about that team aspect. Are there specific teams that you chase in this, or is it just entirely based on where they're starting the race? And when you get a couple teammates that can maybe block out at the top of is that something that you specifically target, or are there teams that you prefer that people should be paying attention to?
So I don't normally team build, but a lot of times so far this year, the next gen car, we've seen where some teams just completely hit the setup. And it seems like Hendrick Motorsports has done that this week. And if you don't know who's exactly in Hendrick, we have Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson. Obviously, those guys qualified in the front row. Those are probably the two cars to beat. You had William Byron, who I was a huge fan of, was super fast, going to the rear now, though. So he's kind of nuked out my projections. But Alex Bowman's sitting there at $8,000. He's very affordable, starting at 11th, gets to keep that starting spot. I'm a big fan of Hendrick this weekend. Typically, JGR, the Toyotas have been really struggling at the road courses this year, which kind of is coinciding with my Martin Truex Jr. exposure, which is a bit lower. So for me, I'm not really team building per se, but I do have a lean on the Hendrick cars.
Okay. All right. So that's an important detail, I think, in there, and maybe, you know, a little bit of an angle that somebody could take on those Hendrick cards specifically, while not necessarily focusing on like just, hey, these are guys from these teams that I'm chasing. What about as we drop down into that $9,000 price tier? It looks like we've got a few really popular drivers in this tier who are projecting out pretty well. And let's call it like 85 and above. Let's work Chris Bell into that conversation because he projects out nicely, but he's the highest owned driver on DK at 65%. So work him in to that group that includes your Cindrics, your Suarez's, your Blaney's, Truex, Kyle Busch, who you mentioned before. Talk to me a little bit about that group and who you like.
Yeah, so I really do think Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex Jr. kind of trap plays today. They're grading out well. I understand that, and I do get it, but I think there's outside factors that maybe you can't project in quite well, which is the worried that Ryan Blaney is going to be point racing today, which is going to hurt his finish at the end of the race. Ryan Blaney just needs to beat out Truex for this race. That is really his only concern. I don't think he has race winning speed. I think he knows that. He was slow in practice. So I do think he's points racing, which is going to put him deep in the pack to start stage 3. And if he crawls his way to a 15, 16 place finish, that's fine. It's a fine cash game play. I have no problem with Blaney in cash, but in tournaments, I think you're lacking that upside. So I do like getting the drivers like AJ Allmendinger, like Daniel Suarez, just a little bit better because I think they have the raw speed to be able to win this race. You have Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Alex Bowman. It's a very loaded range. That's where I think getting away from some of those chalkier drivers, some of these lower owned guys that don't really have to worry about points too much, I think is a really good way to go to get different.
So why are we seeing such a stark ownership differential on a guy like Allmendinger, who's coming in at just a 7% ownership projection, where he rates out a little bit, lower in terms of the raw projection that we've got, but certainly a good starting position. Somebody was on that list. Why is the field so far behind on him?
I think it's mostly due to people just trying to grab Chase Elliott, and everyone wants to get place differential after they get Chase Elliott. Because at road courses, people love place differential because there's a lack of laps. And some of the road courses have been a little chaotic this year. The most recent road course we were at Indy, there was a ton of wrecks. I don't really see that happening today. So I don't think people want to go the Elliott and Dinger route just because it's a couple drivers inside the top 6. But I would rather get the Allmendinger over Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex Jr. I realize it's a lot riskier starting in 6th, but Allmendinger was the only car that was even close to their speed that Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson showed in practice. So if he's only going to be 7% owned, I would much rather be double the field on Dinger than I would on Blaney and Truex.
Yeah, that seems like a solid upside spot for tournament play where, you know, you're shaving a couple points of ownership off of the Blaney's, the Truexes of the world, and just dump them into him and double, triple up the field easy enough. That's a soft spot. What about Austin Cindric? I know nothing about him, but it looks like he's in a similar position, only 6% ownership starting in the 8th spot and similarly projected. Is he kind of on that list, or is it kind of just all about the speed of the car with Allmendinger that you were just talking about?
Yeah, I do prefer Allmendinger. Cindric could be in danger of points racing. It's going to be kind of difficult to gauge who's going to be points racing. I think the only one for certain is going to be Blaney. Cindric's one of those guys that I could see potentially doing that, which, like I said, is going to hurt your finish at the end of the race. But he's actually been really good at the road courses. He's the only driver to finish inside the top 10 in each one so far this year. It's mainly just a price thing for me because, like I said, I have a lot of Elliott and Chastain. At that point, it's just really hard for me to get the Cindric as well, roster construction-wise.
Okay, excellent. I was just jumping into the chat to see if anything dropped in question-wise, and it looks like we nailed JJ777 Marsh's question. He says, hey, fellas, thoughts on Cindric and Blaney? So I think we just talked that one through. But guys, if you're in there, we'll hit up some questions. We've got plenty of time to talk this through. We'll go through some more of these drivers. Make sure you're hitting the like and the subscribe for us. We'll take care of a piece of business. We're a minute or two early, but that gives us more time to have fun and talk through the racing on the back end. So the Tua promo, that's still going on. I think today is the last day of the $5 access on the Tua promo. That's for NFL preseason projections. We've got NFL preseason DFS projections up on the site for every single main slate that's going for a limited time only. And again, I think it ends today. You can get access to that for $5 if you use the promo code TUA. That's TUA, all caps, and you click the link in the description below, or if you just navigate to the site and plug in TUA at checkout, that'll get you your $5 access. Pretty solid price for some ridiculously good projections. I don't know if Chris, if you play any NFL preseason or if you read any like Matt Gajewski's content or anything, but he's just unreal. Guys that went to fourth tier colleges, aren't going to be on anybody's NFL roster, wash out of the Canadian Football League, wash out of the Arena League, if that's still a thing. And he's like, oh yeah, this guy will see like 12 targets tonight. He's going to be, he's playing with these guys. He just knows so damn much. It's just an unbelievable resource for $5. So do you play any preseason NFL?
I've never touched it, but even I know I've heard about him and how good he is. So yeah, definitely, in my opinion, a smart decision not to play the preseason NFL stuff. But if you are out there looking for it, that's the guy to go to. And that Tua promo is one to take advantage of for $5 access. So pretty killer. But yeah, if you're like me, I'm waiting on the start of the regular season. Right. I'm in fast and furious, to be honest. So people can check out the various packages, the platinum plan and all that stuff. We've got different promos going for all the different plans. We'll talk about a NASCAR one coming up in just a little bit. Just a teaser. NASCAR LBL is going to be the promo code for that one. All right, so let's jump back on here. Let's talk about some of these mid-range guys as we go down. Like, what about in the $8,000 tier? You touched on Bush a little bit earlier. He's 8,900 starting 10th. We've got like Briscoe. We've got Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick hiding in that tier, Joey Logano. Some names that even somebody like me recognizes, but they're drawing a lot of popularity. And I suspect that that's probably a little bit to do with why they're fairly priced. They're recognizable names. Are those guys just kind of mix and match plays? You take them where you get them, and where you're going to be like relative to the field on those guys who are drawing that weight in the $8,000 tier? Yeah, besides Christopher Bell being the obvious play, I mean, you got to load up on him. It's really easy just to kind of mix and match these guys. I personally do not like Kyle Busch. He's not been good at the road courses. He's going to the rear. I cannot see him finishing inside the top 10, so he's a cross-off for me. But after Bell, you have Hamlin, Harvick, Logano, Bowman. All these guys are excellent plays to mix and match. Hamlin, Harvick, and Logano specifically are basically the same play. They're all starting 20th through 24th. Harvick's been the best at the road courses this year. He's finished in the top 11, 3 out of the past 4 road course races. He'd be my favorite of the bunch. Hamlin and the Toyotas overall have struggled, but again, he's only $8,600. Logano is cheap. He's been bad at the road courses this year, but he showed speed in yesterday's practice. For the most part, I have about 25% of all 3 of these guys, 25 to 30%, and I feel good about that. Not a strong lean, but I do prefer Harvick if I had to pick.
Okay, so slightly below the field, but fairly enthusiastic, at least about mixing and matching them through a big lineup build. Do you think the Hamlin ownership being at 31%, where you're getting 40 on Logano, 47 on Harvick, is that probably a product of the struggles at the road course? Is that really where that's coming from, you think?
Yeah, I don't think they're worth putting in that much of your lineups. I do think guys like Bowman, Busher, who aren't getting as much love, definitely deserve to get some exposure to. So that's kind of where some of that ownership is going to for me personally. I don't think there's a 50%. I don't think there's like a 40% chance where Logano's in the optimal lineup today. I think that is more so sitting in the upper 20s. So I personally would rather be underweight if it's going to be that high, and I'd rather get to a Busher and Bowman for lower ownership.
Okay. All right, so let's dive into that field a little bit. Then we've got dropping below the 8,000 range. Bowman right at 8,000. Busher, Byron, somebody that I was clued into yesterday that I think is maybe somewhat interesting, and I have no idea if it's really true. But Kimi Räikkönen making his NASCAR debut, a Finnish F1 driver. Our producer Tyler, big F1 guy, and was very enthusiastically recommending that I at least mention this guy to you on the show today. So talk to me about that tier of drivers. The guys, 7,600, between 76 and 8,000, those 5 guys.
Yeah, so I'm not, is this on FanDuel pricing?
Sorry, that was DK pricing.
Okay, I apologize. All right. Yeah, so for Kimi, I figured he'd be a popular question this week because people are excited about playing him. He's also in a Trackhouse car, which usually these road ringers will get him, not really saying he's a road ringer compared to some of these other guys, but typically we see them in lesser equipment. We're getting Kimi in the 91 car for Trackhouse, which is actually pretty good because the Trackhouse cars have been excellent at the road courses this year. If you're wondering who Trackhouse is, Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, these have been 2 of the fastest cars on the track at road courses this year. But Kimi, obviously very limited experience in the next gen car, P20 in the 1 lap in practice, qualified poorly. I think it's more of a battle for a top 20 today, and I think DraftKings kind of overpriced him.
Okay. All right. So we're maybe shooting for the stars with him a little bit in terms of where DK's got him landed price wise. What was his FanDuel price? Is he like a discount dandy on FanDuel?
Yeah, he's $6,000 over there. So it's a bit easier to fit in. But the thing on FanDuel is place differential isn't going to be as important for a cheaper driver like that, where I don't think he's going to finish inside the top 15. So there's not a ton of interest either way.
Okay, so for that one to pay off, you really need him to fight his way up the field, probably unrealistic amount. All right, so let's talk then about the guys who are seemingly a little bit more appropriately priced. Again, with DK pricing, that would be Bauman, Busher, Byron, and let's throw Keselowski into that mix at 7,300 on the DK slate. So any favorites out of that group? You mentioned them, I know, when we were talking about the guys who were higher priced, but relative to one another, where are you getting those guys, the Bauman, Busher, Byrons of the world?
Yeah, I love Chris Busher today. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. He has been excellent at road courses this year, and he's not going to have quite the ownership as some of these other guys. He's got good track position to work with, top 6 speeds in practice, average finish of 9.8 at the road courses this season with 3 top 10 finishes. Finished second at Sonoma, 6 at Road America. I mean, if he's going to be a lot lower owned than guys like Harvick, Hamlin, Logano, I want to be more of a weight on Chris Busher. So loving him today. Alex Bowman, one of those Hendrick cars that are cheap. I think he has top 6 potential. But as far as William Byron, I liked him a lot heading into this race. But with the news that he's dropping to the rear, I severely limited my exposure because he's got to work his way through the front. And him leading laps is probably out of the question at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I got to let me see if we've done another update, because it looks like we don't have the starting positions updated on that last update that dropped. All the other data updated except for the starting position. So if somebody's out there, maybe they can touch that up. So all right, let's drop down then even a little bit further. We've got some interesting value plays on the board here. Brad Keselowski, I mentioned 7,300. He's one of the higher projected guys in this next group, drawing 8% ownership on DK. Then you get into like Michael McDowell, Ty Gibbs, Bubba Wallace, Austin Dillon. That drops us down to Dillon at 6,500, drawing 1% ownership. Not much of a projection on him. Anybody you like from that tier, guys?
Yeah, so from Keselowski on down, it's kind of a bit of a dead zone here. Michael McDowell is interesting because he's starting in third and he's going to have very low ownership, and he's been really good at the road courses this year. I think there is a chance he can kind of hold that ground, but Ty Gibbs going to the rear, that's going to hurt him today. Bubba Wallace is awful at road courses. Eric Jones is really bad at the road courses this year. He's also dropping to the rear. His practice wasn't as bad. Yeah, it's not great. But, I mean, his price is fine where I think you can play him in cash games. But this is really a dead zone for me. I like McDowell, and I think Austin Dillon has top 15 potential, but for where he's starting, the upside's very limited. So big dead zone for me besides McDowell.
Okay, so then are you dropping further down and grabbing value plays from like a further down tier and just kind of forgoing this this like $6,000 range then using DK pricing?
Yeah, actually the next 2 drivers below Austin Dillon, Cole Custer and Eric Almirola, those are guys I'm getting to quite a bit actually.
Okay, so let's talk about those guys then. Custer and Almirola, both names that I know a little bit from dabbling in these streets, definitely getting a good amount of attention. 6,300, 6,200 on DK. Let's dive into a little bit about those guys. What's appealing about them from their start positions?
Well, not a whole bunch is appealing, but the problem is roster construction wise, you just have to play some of these drivers and Custer and Almirola. Yeah. So Custer and Almirola, they're ones I'm getting to the most of. Custer's actually not been terrible at the road courses with an average running position of 15.5 this season, which is about 15 spots higher than where he's starting. Finished 9th at Indy, 15th at Road America, 21st at Sonoma, and 23rd at Coda. If he can just hit those marks, that's not a bad day at his price point. And as for Eric Almirola, not expecting much here whatsoever, but starting in 35th. As long as he doesn't wreck out today or have a mechanical issue, he should be able to gain you close to 10 spots, which will get the job done on DraftKings at 6,200.
Okay, so really we're just looking to, even though they're chalky, maybe just book some cheap points with those guys and hope they don't wreck out, finish the race, grab me a few points, and that's probably good enough. Is there anybody that's kind of on your board that's popping as a potential pivot, like same kind of a play, but not getting that level of ownership? Because both those guys are owned over 20%. So they're definitely going to be chalked from the value range. Is there anybody else who's like viable from that kind of a tier, that kind of a play where it's just grab me a few points and that's going to be good enough for me, and you get them at a little lower ownership?
Yeah, Justin Haley is right below them. He is not going to be played by just about anybody today, starting in 13th, but he has top 15 upside at the road courses, was P12 in the 1 lap in practice, and finished 12th early in the season at Sonoma. The problem is, though, I really have a hard time seeing him gain spots here, but he is going to have virtually no ownership compared to guys like Cole Custer and Eric Almirola. So if you're looking for the pivot there, it's scary, But if you want to play some other chalk, big name chalk in your lineup, Justin Haley's a nice pivot off of the low end chalk of Custer Almirola.
Yeah, and it's really, I think once we're getting to this level, like with any of these other sports, we're really looking at, all right, what's the difference in what going to one of these guys taking a little bit more risk tolerance and dropping my price by a little bit? What's the difference that's going to buy me? Is that going to buy me my, Chase Elliott and whoever Ross Chastain combination to grab names from the top that you said before? So I think that makes some sense. I think you do, obviously have to embrace the riskiness of it. What about a guy drawing a little bit of attention on the DK slate? Harrison Burton, 5,800, drawing 8%, projects out kind of in the mid-range, kind of with those other guys. Any interest in him?
Yeah, I don't mind him. He did finish in the top 5 of the last road course, but kind of got lucky just by not wrecking because all the drivers seemed to wreck during that race. But Burton's not a guy that's flashy, but starting in 30th, if you just need someone that can pick up a couple spots, if other guys wreck out, I think Burton's fine, but I'm not rushing to the door to play Harrison Burton today.
Okay. And then just looking from the rest of the value board, just considering just all the way down to the bottom price wise, anybody to call out from the extreme value tier? There's one guy who looks like he's drawing a lot of attention on DK, and that's Cody Ware at 4,800, 25% popularity. Are you into him? And then is there anybody else that might be a pivot at that range?
Yeah, I understand people that would want to play Cody Ware starting at 39 because he's dead last and he cannot lose you any spots. The problem is Ware is just one of those drivers that has to rely on drivers wrecking out for him to grab a good finish. Like at Indy, a lot of drivers wrecked. He finished 24th, but besides that, 32nd, 27th. If you're looking at the practice numbers, I believe he was P34 and P32. So unless there's a bunch of wrecks, I can't see Cody Ware sneaking into the optimal lineup today. So I'll be severely underweight on that number.
Okay. What about Ty Dillon? Slightly more expensive at 5,100 on DK, drawing 9%. He looks like he's the only other guy who's really drawing any attention. And then, names that I know from that tier, Corey LaJoie is drawing like 2%. I think that's how you say that name. Kyle Tilley drawing like 2% down all the way at the bottom of our projections, min price at 4,500. Any reason to swap some of those guys into your lineups, or are they just kind of not viable and the field's wasting their time?
Yeah, Corey LaJoie has been really bad at the road courses this year besides the Indy race. But Ty Dillon, I don't mind playing slow in practice, obviously, but I think it's fine just because of how cheap he is at $5,100. He does not need to do much at all to grab a decent day over on DraftKings. He's got a couple of top 20 finishes at road courses this year. Besides Ty Dillon, I am not touching any of those drivers.
Okay. All right. That makes, I think, some sense. And that basically cleans out the bottom of the value tier. So before the show, we were talking a little bit, and you told me that you play typically your full entries, your full slate 150 on the FanDuel slate, and then you dabble in like the 3 maxes and things like that on DK. So just site to site, if there's people out there who are, throwing some lineups in, but not necessarily too deep into NASCAR, talk to me about like the site to site differences, and then any plays that stand out to you. We've been using the DK pricing and some of the DK values on our board, but let's talk about some of the guys that look a little bit different on FanDuel and what those key differences site to site are in terms of lineup construction or anything else.
Yes, over on DraftKings, there's always going to be more of an emphasis on place differential and dominator points, because over on DK, you get 0.7 for the total dominator points. It's 0.45 for a fast lap, 0.25 for a lap led. Over on FanDuel, you're only getting 0.1 for a lap led, and that is it. So a guy like Chase Elliott's not going to grade out as well over on FanDuel, but he's still a good play. But a guy like Ross Chastain, I like him on DraftKings quite a bit, but even on FanDuel, I like him even more because he's don't really care about the laps that he's not going to lead early on. And the finishing position and a little bit of place differential mixed in there is going to make him a better play. So like over on FanDuel, I have more of guys like Alex Bowman. I have more Joey Logano. I have more Chris Buescher, but they all kind of translate well for a road course. If this was a different track type, a lot of times we'll see a bit of a more difference, but when it comes to a road course, they tend to translate pretty similar.
Okay. And you're getting, on the FanDuel slate, just sorting it by price, some of those names that you just threw out there relative to where the top guys are priced at, it looks like you're getting a little bit more value out of like the Buschers of the world on the FanDuel slate. So is that part of the appeal over there where they're kind of maybe a little bit low priced relative to the top end?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, place differential is not as big of a deal, and obviously Chris Buescher is not going to offer you much place differential, but it's mainly just the finishing position upside, which Chris Buescher offers you. So I like him on both sides. Buescher does fit in a little bit easier there.
Okay, like that a lot. Let's jump into chat here and see what the people are talking about. Let's see. You got a compliment on your Mount Union shirt. Is that Mount Union, the college that won like 37 straight D3 and football championships back in the late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, I live and grew up in the city in Ohio there before I moved, so I went to college there. Yep.
I went to Rowan University, the team that they beat in 5 straight national championships. We were the Buffalo Bills of D3 college football back then. How about that? So you got a compliment on that Mountain Union shirt in the chat there from Buck near R or knee R. Let's see. We've got how big a trap is Brad? I assume Brad Keselowski. How big a trap is Brad Keselowski? Asks Duke Nicola.
It's hard to call him a trap because he's not really bringing in much ownership today. So I feel like a trap would be what I considered if they were higher round. But for me, I don't want to play Brad today, starting too far up for me. I don't think he's going to really have the raw speed to compete for a top 10 finish. So I'm personally passing.
Okay. All right. So maybe not a trap, but not necessarily the spot for you. Jake Swales is asking Bauman, Briscoe, or Suarez?
Bauman, Briscoe, or Suarez?
No site given.
Okay. I'd have to go probably Suarez raw points wise, but it's tough between him and Bowman. I'm going to go with Suarez there.
Okay. All right. We will. Somebody, Duke Nicholas says, Kimmy is a total dick if you watch F1. So if you judge your plays based on somebody's personality, whether they're a good person or not, maybe that's your tiebreaker on whether or not he goes into a lineup. But it sounded like you weren't really into that play anyway, despite some potential value. Let's see here. Somebody points out that he's driving the car that Suarez won in California, but I don't know that we're going to go jumping to make any changes there. So let's talk Prize Picks real quick. They're sponsoring the show. They're a just great partner of ours. If you guys haven't played over there, it's a blast to play on it. I've only been able to use their site once or twice because I'm in New Jersey where you unfortunately can't play on their site, but it's daily prop-based contests and you can go across different sports. You can put together, basically looking to put together a 4 or 5 player prop combination on your card. If you hit 5 of 5, you win up to 10 times your entry fee. And we have people who are just absolutely brutalizing the Prize Picks slates night in, night out using the site's projections. Our guy, Eric Lindquist, does daily content for this, and he's just been crushing Prize Picks all year long. There's no sharks. There's no optimizers. There's no mass entries. You're playing against the player prop board, basically. So you go down, you string together a card of your favorite picks. We've got projections on the site. You can use something like OddsShopper. You can use our different prop tools to find these best picks. And you can make multiple cross-sport entries. So if you like something for NASCAR, if you like something for baseball, if you like something for the preseason football slate, throw all that onto the same card and cash out a 10 times entry fee prize. Not too bad. There's a link down in the video descriptions. Hit the like button and the subscribe on the way down to that, and then click the link over at Prize Picks. We've got a promo going with them, you guys. So if you're going to go over there and check it out, make sure you use promo code AWESEMO. That's all caps, promo code AWESEMO. I guess we haven't been able to change that yet. So all caps, one more time, AWESEMO. That gets you a $100 first match deposit bonus. So if you're going to check out the site, might as well get a free $100 for doing it. You can find Prize Picks in the App Store, on Google Play, or just go over to prizepicks.com. And really, like I said, fun site. I encourage everybody to check it out. Chris, do you play on Prize Picks? Are you able to play where you live? Is that part of your repertoire?
Yeah, I can't bet legally, but I can do Prize Picks, which is a nice workaround.
That's great. Yeah, I was going to call that out, actually. It's if you live somewhere where you can't make actual prop bets, it's a dynamite way to be able to work those in. So do you have anything in mind? I didn't get a chance to really take a look at the board and wouldn't have really known what I was doing anyway. So do you have anything in mind looking at Prize Picks for today, NASCAR-wise?
Yeah,
if not, that's fine. I know I didn't prep you for that.
No, I got a few here. I took the over on Chris Buescher's NASCAR points at 31.5. I'm checking the site to see if those adjusted, and they did not. So you still got 44 minutes if you want to make some Prize Picks bets over for the NASCAR race here today. But for Buescher to get over 31.5 NASCAR points, we're basically talking about a top 10 finish, which is something Buescher has been able to do the past 3 races. So I definitely think that's in the cards. He showed top 6 speeds over in practice. So I like taking the over on the Buescher, 31.5 NASCAR points. I also took the over on Bowman's 28.5 NASCAR points, which is basically banking on a top 12 finish, which it seems like all the Hendrick cars have the speed to do that. And with Byron going to the back, that does help him gain a spot early on. So he should be able to stay within the top 10 for the majority of the race. Then the last one I took, it felt a bit risky, but it seems like I got some good line value there because it's now down to 9.5 laps led for Tyler Reddick. But I originally took the under on him leading 11.5 laps led. And like I said, I like Tyler Reddick today, but for him to get out front of the 2 Hendrick cars, Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott, I think it's going to be pretty tough to do. So I took the under on Reddick's lap led.
Okay. All right. And then what about Chase Elliott at 38.5 laps led? We know where he's starting on the pole and everything, but that seems like a high number to me, maybe. Is that a little bit high? Or are you into that one?
I could certainly see it happening, but I would not bet on it. I mean, we're talking about a 90 lap race. That's almost half the race. I can't do it personally.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was just thinking. It was just, if we're coming in talking about a guy leading half the race, maybe that's something to target. But yeah, if you're not into it, I'm not into it. I can't say, I can't say anything there. Just kicking around the board just because I think it's fun to talk some of these prize picks ones, and we've got some time to look at it. What about on the cars passed, net cars passed? Anybody that you like on that board? A guy like Christopher Bell, 25.5. We know that he's somebody we're targeting maybe from the back. We've talked about him a few times. Is that something that's viable for you? 25.5 cars passed, net cars passed?
It's a bit steep for me because he does not need to pass 25 cars to be a good DFS play. For him to get 25.5 cars at a track that's going to be a little bit tougher to pass, I'd probably have to take the under if I was forced. But the one I like the most here is the Ryan Blaney under 16.5 cars passed, because like I said, he's probably going to be points racing, and that's going to put him in a bad position for stage 3. So I think the under on 16.5 is pretty good, because we're basically talking about a top 10 finish for Blaney. I don't see that happening today.
Okay, there we go. So guys, we just made a solid handful of picks. We is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that statement. Chris just made you a bunch of solid picks there. So you can go in, fill those ones out. If there's anything else you like, just prizepicks.com, fire it up, drop a card in, see if you can win 10 times your entry fee tonight by getting 5 of those right. If you like any, like I said, if you like any preseason NFL stuff or anything like that to work in, you can work into multi-sport prop bets here. Not too bad. Let's see what else we have on the board. Any questions in the chat? Anybody else asking anything? Any interest in Alric Almora as a punt? I think we touched on him briefly, but somebody's Stan Kruger in chat is asking about Almora.
Yeah, he's a pretty easy play in the back today. I don't really think he's going to be a slate breaker kind of guy. But if you were playing cash games, he's someone I'm probably just going to plug in, because as long as he doesn't wreck, he's going to gain you close to 10 spots. So I'm definitely a pretty big fan there just because of that.
Okay. All right. So yeah, it was a big yes. Somebody asking, I think you just kind of addressed it in terms of the DFS viability versus the cars past viability that we're talking on prize picks. But Alan S is asking, should I fade Byron in a GPP on DK since he's moving to the back?
Yeah, that's what I did. I was going to have him in one of my 3 max builds over on DraftKings, but I'm just going to fade him now at this point.
Okay. If you're going full 150, how many out of 150 is he going to make it into?
So beforehand, I had him around 30% ownership. I am now down to sub 10%.
Okay. So that made a big difference for him. All right. Let's see. Cash lineups for DK. Spunky Spectrum Sports. Nice alliteration. So that's why we're throwing the question in. It's a pretty vague question. Just who looks good for cash lineups? Who are your top 3 cash plays on DK?
Yeah. So the first 3 guys I'd plug in: Chase Elliott, just starting in the poll. I think he's going to win this race. I think he's going to lead a good chunk of laps. Christopher Bell starting in 38. That's a free play. He's going to be about 100% on cash. If you don't play him, you're making a mistake. And then Almirola starting in 35th. Again, he only needs to gain a few spots. So just plugging him in, I feel pretty good about those 3.
Okay, solid. JJT12380 asks, can we go to Todd Gilliland? Gilliland is how he typed it. Is it Gilliland or Gilliland?
You had it first. You had it right the first time, Gillen.
Okay. Any reason to go to him? Is he on your board at all today? No,
he is not. He's starting a little bit too high for me in 19th. I'd much rather get to a guy like Burton starting 11 spots further back personally.
Okay. And is that, let's see. Okay. Yeah, no, I just saw where he was priced out and where our ownership was. I was going to ask if there was any reason across like 150 GPP lineups if you're getting to him, but doesn't look like he's overly viable as far as our tools are considered. Right. It looks like 0 ownership on him for 5,700, but yeah, it doesn't look like a big target on our board here. Let's see. DK single entry GPP, last spot, Dinger or Chastain?
Ooh. If you have Elliott, I would say Chastain. If you don't have Elliott, I'd go with Dinger. It's going to be more of a roster construction standpoint.
Okay. Criticize this lineup. No site given. Criticize this lineup. Find a flaw with it. Elliott, Almirola, Buescher, Chastain, Dillon, and Bell.
Did he specify what Dillon?
A Dillon. Austin?
Yes. Okay. That's actually a really good lineup. The only scary part of that is Austin Dillon for where he's starting, but if he can hold his ground, that's a really good tournament lineup.
Okay. So nice job out there. Anthony Baumel, way to go. Yay or nay on Brad Keselowski? I know we touched on that one before, but somebody's just Duke Nicholas looks like he's just playing some catch up here.
Yeah, it's going to be a nay for me. I'm not a big fan of Brad Keselowski today. When you look at that price range, I think I'd rather get to McDowell. I'd rather get to a Busher. So I'm not a huge fan there.
Okay. Let me jump into our premium Discord. I've been using the YouTube chat, but we've got a premium Discord up, guys. It's part of the membership. If you join up at the site, we'll talk about a little promo code for that in a minute. But we got to pay attention in Discord. Looks like Clint Wood 83 is asking, am I wrong for having a group limiting to at most 2 top 10 starters? So is he wrong for doing that and restricting it to only 2 guys starting in the top 10 in his lineups for DK? And then are there any things like that that you like to call out in terms of the tools, in terms of Fantasy Cruncher or any other optimizer people might be using, how you use groups, stacks, things like that? Are there tools that you like to call out and specific constructions you like to chase through what those tools let you do?
Yeah, it's going to be slate dependent for me this weekend. I mean, I understand wanting to make a group of at most 2. I think there's some times where you can't sneak into 3. So I would say probably at most 3 for me. But yeah, definitely the tools. If you're using Fantasy Cruncher on the website, it's a lot of times where NASCAR is one of those sites, or NASCAR is one of those sports where groups are very important for me. If it's a dominator kind of race, I'm making dominator groups. I'm making scrub groups. Me and Jason are always talking about this every single week. But for a track like a road course, it's not really a track where I'm using too much groups.
Okay. All right. So Clint Wood, that's your answer there. So unfortunately, we don't really talk through the groups for this type of race. Are there any groups that you are throwing into your Fantasy Cruncher, like just trying to block off maybe some of the, the most popular guys together? Or is it just, like you said, road race, not really a priority for you?
Yeah, the one group I think that would actually make some sense this weekend would be putting Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott in the same group and putting a max of 1, because I don't think we're going to see the driver starting 1-2 optimal at a road course, because there's not as many laps as compared to a Richmond where there's 400 laps to where if they both lead 30 laps, that's fine, but they have to finish 1-2. They both have to dominate, and that's pretty slim chances. So I would personally have a max group of 1 for those 2.
Okay. I like that. That sounds like a pretty solid approach and a way guys can exploit the tools out there. So let's jump in here and talk about that promo that I mentioned. Stokastic plus NASCAR with the promo code, wait for it, NASCAR LBL, because you're watching NASCAR Live Before Lock. Pretty easy. That's all one word. Put it all together, NASCAR LBL. Great access to all the great Stokastic Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with a Stokastic Plus Platinum Pass. All right, I know what I'm talking about now. Platinum Pass is the one that you guys really want to check out, right? That's the one that includes every tool, every sport, everything that we cover, whether it's top stacks for baseball, top stacks for football, top drivers tool for NASCAR, whether it's top golfers for golf, just general projections, ownership projections. Every single piece of content we put out for every sport we cover is included in the Platinum Pass. If you're just interested in NASCAR, you're just a NASCAR DFS player, just a NASCAR fan, and all other sports suck, regardless of which one of these plans you want to jump on, you can get 50% off of your first week as a new user by using that promo code NASCAR LBL. So plug that in, jump over there. I'm sure we've got links down in the bottom here. Fantasy Cruncher is not included in that. It's always a paid add-on, and that's for new users only, but really, really encourage people to take advantage of it and consider the Platinum plan. Just with football starting up soon, baseball still winding down, NBA and NHL not that far off. There's a lot going on, and there's a ton of bang for your buck in there, particularly if you're getting a nice little preview with 50% off your first week of any pass as a new user. So not a bad spot. Make sure you're taking advantage of that, guys. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Chris is doing a lot of hard work. He's doing a lot of heavy lifting. Show him a little bit of love. I think it's coming through that I don't know enough about this sport to carry anything on this show. Everything is on his shoulders. So let's get that over 100 thumbs up for Chris. We got 387 people in the chat. Shouldn't be difficult. None of those go to me. All of them go to Chris. Thoughts on Bubba? I think you mentioned that Bubba's not good on the road courses. Thought on Bubba on a FanDuel GPP?
He's been on fire recently. He got lucky at the last road course, mowed the grass. They didn't give him a penalty, and a lot of guys wrecked out. But he ended up not getting a penalty, finished well. I don't think that's going to happen again. Besides that, he's been in the late 30s as far as his finishes are concerned. So not going to be a big fan of Bubba here at all.
Okay. In 150 lineups on FanDuel, is he making his way into any of them for you? Or like what kind of percentage are you looking at?
Yeah, it's around 6 to 8% currently. Not a full fade, but I'm not a big fan of
minor play trickles in around the edges where you get him. What about McDowell? How much McDowell are you getting to?
Yeah, I'm overweight on McDowell. I'm actually close to 20% on him. I know he's kind of a risky play starting in third, but I mean, he's been really good at the road courses this year, and he could use a win. So I don't mind it as a punt to try to get different.
Okay. And it looks like he's pretty damn low owned on the DK slate anyway, sitting at 1% for 7,100. That seems like an interesting spot that can definitely help with some lineup construction. So yeah, anytime. I mean, I know enough DFS anyway to know that low owned guy like that, little bit of risk tolerance, maybe can get you very far in these tournaments. So that's a good one to chase. Looks like in the Discord chat, let's see, would unchecking Bell be dumb? Taking Bell out of the pool, would that be dumb?
Yes, that would be dumb, I think, today, because this is a track where dominant points aren't that important. I know passing is not going to be quite easy, but this is a guy that had top 15 speeds in practice. He's in a good ride, starting dead last. If he just finishes top 20 today, decent chance he's knocking on the door for the optimal lineup. This is a very easy path for Bell to be optimal.
Okay, so Woody C in our Discord, one of our regulars, Woody. Sounds like unchecking Bell would be pretty dumb, pal. Looks like another one of our regulars is talking to Woody, and Logan French is saying he's tempted to uncheck Blaney. What about unchecking Blaney and taking him out of the pool?
I'd feel more comfortable unchecking Blaney just due to the fact that we talked about where he might sell out for the points early on, which is going to hurt his finish at the end of the day, which is going to hurt his GPP upside.
Okay. All right. So maybe that's a little bit more viable. Do you typically, are there, when you're building lineups, are there guys that you do typically take fully out of a pool? Or is it more like, all right, I'm just shooting to be below the field 6-8% on a guy who's going to be 20 or something like that?
Yeah, it's going to depend. Like road courses, I've been typically just taking some of the Toyotas out of my pool completely. I'm not doing that this weekend since there's more horsepower needed. I think some of these guys can show up a little bit. And obviously you're going to want to play Bell, and Hamlin's a good play, but there is some guys I'm taking some pretty big stances on. Like I got about a third of Blaney and Truex compared to the field today. And I have 0 Kyle Busch. So I actually took him out of the pool today. Okay. So a couple drivers I am doing that on.
All right. So it's an interesting approach. I mean, that's something that I guess is unique to different sports where, like, you know, in, let's say, baseball, right? I'm not going through and taking a bunch of baseball players out of my lineup because of the any given slate, any given day nature of baseball, how stacks work. But with something like this, where you're, you know, talking much more about an individual performer, individual car, or the way that the team builds their cars, I guess it could make a little bit more sense to take them out. I hadn't really considered that. Is that something you think more about you mentioned the Toyotas? Is it something you think more about the nature and the performance of the cars? Or is it something where you're just looking at like the drivers, the prices, the popularity, and things like that when you make that decision?
Yeah, a lot of times it's just been the setups this year. Because at practice, there's been a lot of times where the team just completely missed setups, and at certain track types, like overall, like I said, I'm warming up the Toyotas this weekend. I do a good chunk of Chris Bell and Denny Hamlin, those kind of guys. But overall, I mean, you've been able to tell where some teams just completely miss it and some teams completely hit. Like a lot of times the Fords compared to the Toyotas will be way off. And that's where I'm just completely low on the Fords compared to the Toyotas. So today it seems like everyone's kind of right around there speed-wise. So I'm not going to be that aggressive as far as teams are concerned. But yeah, it's definitely NASCAR is one of those sports where you can do something like that.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Definitely a different approach. That's what, like I said at the top of the show, I love jumping on these things because I learn every time I host one of these shows where I don't know that very much about the sport. I pick up some new stuff. Gary Graff in the chat is asking maybe an important question. He's saying there's lightning in the area and rain on the way. Do we have any impact from that on the lineup? Any concerns about the weather?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really build lineups based on if rain's going to happen or not. You can race in the rain at a road course compared to an oval. So, I mean, they're still going to be fine during the race, but I can't switch the drivers I like compared to just because if it's going to rain or not. So can't change the strategy there.
Okay. So no overall impact there. No specific kinds of cars where the tires are bald and they'll go skidding off the sides of the course or anything like that. Right. Can you pair Buescher, McDowell, and Custer on a single GPP? Guys, when you throw these questions in, make sure you're mentioning the sites because it's important for not only construction, but also price. So nice site given from Jay Lopez, but what do you think of Buescher, McDowell, and Custer in the same lineup on a single entry GPP?
Yeah, you can do that. I'm assuming you have a pretty top-heavy lineup because those drivers are not that expensive. So I'm perfectly fine with that. But with Buescher and McDowell both starting with almost in the top 5, I try to get some PD and mixed in there as well.
Okay. Rated Jeff asks another good construction question. What do you do as far as maxing out salary? Are you all right with leaving money on the table specifically in this race? And then just in general with NASCAR, what do you do? Do you try and always close out your salary or, get as close as you can? Or are you okay leaving money on the table for NASCAR construction?
Yeah, I'm okay with leaving money on the table. I mean, NASCAR is one of the best sports to do that. I mean, the road courses this year, we've seen sometimes where there's 4K on the table, 3K on the table. Next week, we're going to be talking where maybe you can leave 20K on the table at a track like Daytona. You won't have to worry about that because I don't think you're going to be the host for that one. But yeah, I mean, leaving money on the table, it certainly is fine to do for a sport like this.
Okay. Interesting. So that's another good approach. And that's something that, you see it come through a lot to bring baseball into it again. You see it come through a lot in baseball where it's just based on how the sites price things. You don't necessarily, just because you have the money doesn't mean you have to spend it. If you get to the right combinations, you're getting to high upside combinations, and just through happenstance and through how the sites put it together, you're not maxing out the salary. I almost don't care. So that's good to know as well. And an important construction question. So appreciate that. Reddick or Chastain, DKGPP for Margie Duns easy.
Ooh, I'm going to go with Chastain there. I do like Reddick today as a lower owned play, but I like Ross Chastain a little bit more overall.
Okay. And let's see, is everyone sleeping on Stenhouse today, like Logan French seems to think?
I think they're sleeping on him for a good reason. He's not typically a guy that we like at the road courses too often. Starting in 21st, there's just not much upside whatsoever. So I feel pretty good about being pretty low on Stenhouse.
Okay. Makes some sense. Let's jump back, and we skipped over to listener questions, but we do have the betting thing in there. We talked betting, and we talked it through a little bit on the props side when we were talking prize picks. Any specific bets that you're making, like sports wager style on this race? Anything that's jumping out to you that we didn't talk about in the prize pick section?
Yeah, unfortunately myself, I cannot make any legal bets here.
Oh, right. You mentioned that.
But if I was able to, I think putting some money down on a guy like Ross Chastain at plus 1,500 to win. I mean, he has a ton of speed at the road courses this year. I know it's going to be tough to beat Chase Elliott, but he's been one of the best drivers at road courses, the best average green flag speed rating in the top 5, I should say. Trackhouse has been great. Going to go for the win, don't have to worry about stage points for Ross. I don't think that's a bad bet, but as far as long shots are concerned, besides Chase Elliott, Busher, McDowell, Ross Chastain would be the only guys I'd be able to bet on, I think.
Okay. And you said that was plus 1,500?
The last time I looked, Ross was at plus 1,500. I'm not sure if that's changed since.
That sounds like some solid value for a guy that you think could come through. So, all right, maybe if people are scrolling around chasing a wager to make, that's a good call out there. Let's see. Jared Nelson, thoughts on Jared, did you just skip the entire show? Jared Nelson is asking thoughts on Elliott, Truex, Bell, Eric Jones, Almirola, Hamlin, DK. I assume that's a lineup question. So let's do another criticize the lineup. DK lineup, Elliott, Truex, Bell, Eric Jones, Almirola, and Hamlin.
Overall, that's a good line. I'm not huge on Martin Truex Jr. today, but if he just finishes top 15, I think overall that lineup's not too bad. So I don't have too many criticisms there. Okay. It is chalky though.
Okay, a little bit chalky, but not one to easily criticize. Looks like we are in a lightning delay. Does that change your opinion at all about what you said before about the weather?
No, it doesn't change. It just gives us more time to build lineups, hopefully.
There you go. Yep. We'll get you off the show in a couple of minutes. Right. Jump on that. Jim Parrish asks thoughts on Haley.
Justin Haley is a pretty risky play today, starting in 13th, but I think he's got some speed to be able to compete today for a top 12 finish. He did finish, I believe, 12th early in the season, one of the road courses, and was 12th in practice. But I mean, for where he's starting, there's a ton of risk there, but that comes with some pretty low ownership, which is going to look good in tournaments.
Yep. And we know, certainly key for winning GPPs, you got to embrace a little bit of risk. You got to find those lower owned plays. Is that in terms of how ownership construction strings together for you? Do you chase super low on plays? Like how many single digit ownership plays are you working in versus just kind of lower owned combinations of drivers, guys in like the 15 type of range?
Yeah. So I'm not
low on guys.
Yeah, I'm not going to go crazy on some of these low-end guys. I think maybe throwing in one is fine in a lineup or two. Like, I don't want to go with a Keselowski, Haley, McDowell lineup just to get crazy because I think I think you're just getting too contrarian at that point. So I don't know if you can hear the dog barking. Apologize.
All right.
But I definitely like getting some chalk mixed in there because a lot of times NASCAR chalk tends to be pretty good, but I like to get a couple pivots mixed in there as well.
Yep. And I think that's another important thing to call out. Sport to sport, people get a little bit too caught up in saying, all right, I need, 3 of these guys to be owned in the low single digits. People misunderstand what the differentiation you actually need and how different you really want to get versus how much of the chalk. So that sounds like a pretty good spot. I think I'm going to say that we can probably get up toward punching out here unless any really critical questions come through in the next couple seconds while I'm talking about this. But what I really want to do, guys, we need 5 more thumbs up for Chris here to get over 100. We're at 348 people watching the show. We're at 95 thumbs. I think we can get our guy here over 100 thumbs. Again, he's been carrying the entire show. Show him a little bit of love, guys. He's been making some killer picks, threw out some awesome bets here. Hit the like, hit the subscribe so that that you can keep up with all the different shows, DFS offers, giveaways, much, much more. Once you subscribe, hit the notification button so those alerts pop up when you go live. Thank you to Prize Picks. Stick around, or no, don't stick around. That would be 3 hours to kill just staring at YouTube frozen. But at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7, another killer show coming up on the Stokastic channel here. Eric Lindquist and Matt Kajeski, who we talked about before for preseason football, the guru of preseason football industry-wide. Matt Kajeski is going to be here to talk through that at 6 o'clock. Kimmy or Bush or DK, last man in?
Definitely Busher for me. I love him today.
Definitely Busher. Thoughts on Ty Dillon to give a thumbs up to make sure you get more of them?
Probably going to be slow, but as long as he doesn't wreck out, he's going to gain a few spots, and he's dirt cheap, so I don't hate it.
All right. That's where we're going to punch out, you guys. I'm going to give Chris 5 extra minutes to work on his lineups. We really appreciate everybody hanging out, all the questions. Good luck out there today. Take care.